Hey, and welcome to another episode of Catholic Book Guy. I'm your host, Brian, the Catholic Book Guy. And sorry it's been a while since my last episode. I'm really slowly doing this whole YouTube thing. I hope to one day, get to a point where I can do maybe one video every week or two. But at any rate, better late than never, right? So, for the next book, this is the third episode. For our next book, I've decided to review Scott Hahn's book called A Father Who Keeps His Promises. And this one is published by, Servant. And I've never heard of that one actually. Servant Publishing, I guess. At any rate, a lot of Hahn's books are published by like Ignatius Press, I think, or Emmaus, which I think maybe is his own publishing company, or at least it's the one that kind of was his brainchild. I think it's associated with Franciscan University Steubenville. I could be wrong, but Dr. Hahn is, if you don't already know, he is a professor of theology at Franciscan University of Steubenville in Steubenville, Ohio. So this book was written in '98, so it's already a good 26 years old, but nonetheless it's a great book. I'm almost done with it, not quite, but I've gotten through enough of it to be able to kind of explain the gist of it. And what I think I want to do is what I think I want to do in this channel in general is not only review books, but also really just use the book as a platform for discussing the content of that book and anything kind of related to it. So in this case, the general topic of this book is covenant theology. Scott Hahn is he's always been very big into covenant theology, and that's covenant theology is it's big in Protestant circles, depending on the denomination. I know it's big with in Reformed theology, which correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Reformed theology is essentially Calvinist at core, or maybe entirely Calvinist. I haven't studied it that extensively, just kind of the basics of it. But covenant theology, even though it's big in certain Protestant circles, it's still relevant for us Catholics. And this book is excellent because it is about covenant theology, but from that Catholic perspective, and that's what Hahn brings to this, kind of his unique take on covenant theology, but with the Catholic perspective in mind. So what this book is essentially is kind of a walkthrough of Scripture, but with the lens of covenant in mind. And covenant, as we know, covenant is it's more than just a contract, right? It's not a simple exchanging of goods or services, but it's more of a family bond. There isn't some involvement of contractual elements, right? Like party A will do this, party B will do this, and then you'll receive this, and blah blah blah. There is some of that in Scripture, as Hahn tells us, but a covenant is much more than just a contract. It's a bond created between family members, almost, right? And that's certainly what it is in this case, and Hahn does a great job of explaining that here, that it's kind of a parent-child covenant in a sense. And he walks us through brilliantly through each major chunk of Scripture. Now most of this is about the Old Testament, right? Because there are more covenants in the Old Testament as opposed to just the New Covenant in the New Testament. So he walks us through succinctly yet thoroughly through the different covenants in the Old Testament. So you've got the covenant with Adam, right? The covenant with Noah, with Abraham, the Davidic covenant, right? And Hahn does a really good job of kind of explaining the details of each one of those different covenants, how it expands on a previous covenant, and how essentially humans, we are always breaking our end of the covenant, but God is the one who keeps his promises, right, as the book says. So if you're looking for a really good kind of summary of covenant theology from a Catholic perspective, this is the book for you. It's not terribly long. It's not a short book by any means. It's 275 pages roughly. It's not a short book, but it's not, a tome by any means. So it's very readable. There's not a lot of overly complicated theological terminology. It's very accessible for the layman, right? So really, I would definitely recommend this. Now, I haven't read anything by Scott Hahn that I haven't liked. So really, any Scott Hahn book that I see, I'm gonna I'm gonna endorse it. But this one particularly, because I'm actually using this in a scripture study class that I'm in with some other guys, and we're using this as our text. So we're looking at it, again, mainly from that covenant perspective. And aside from the covenant theology angle of the book, it's really good in terms of giving you a lot of details that are easy to overlook in the Old Testament. So certain like social and cultural details that are kind of implied in the text, particularly like in the original Hebrew, but those are kind of lost in translation, or we just simply don't get those cultural and social cues because we're not Israelites from a couple thousand years ago. So Hahn, I won't spoil any of them. You'll have to read it for yourself. But he does a great job of adding some of that detail, and there are several times in this book where you'll be reading and you'll say, "Oh wow, I didn't realize that. I didn't know that was the case." So I would definitely recommend that you give this a look. Yeah, feel free to leave any comments or questions in the comment box below. Thank you for watching.